Hello, everyone. This is Christy with AG Takes Over. If you are new here, welcome. So glad you're here. If you are a regular, welcome back. I'm also so glad that you're here. Let's talk doll stuff. So, in a community post about a video that I released not too long ago, somebody responded and said, "Looks intriguing, Christy. I have a suggestion, and I hope you haven't done this yet. How about photography tips? I don't have much photo skill, but I'm so impressed with your skill and those of other AG collectors. Also, maybe display advice, though that might be more up Joe's from AGTV for Life, Allie. You all do such good work." And I have not done a video of photography tips. And I said, I would be happy to do a video with photography tips from a definitely not a pro, but having a lot of fun perspective. So I told her I'll put it on the list and start working on it. And that was really recently. So I just sat down that night and started brainstorming what are the tips that I have. And let me emphasize, this is from a often unmotivated person a perspective. It is from a does not always have the luxury of time perspective and wants to be able to do decent pictures affordably and quickly without a lot of stress. That's my perspective. So I use my phone and that's it. I don't use any editing software. If you are listening to that and you're like, "Pff, I'm well beyond you," many of you probably are, and that is great. And you may choose not to watch this, but if you do, hopefully something will be useful. Um, this is just very, very low key, low tech, low stress. So, in no particular order, well, a little bit. The first couple things I think mostly refer to the outdoor photos that I take, and then a couple things refer mostly to indoors, but the vast majority of it refers to anywhere you're taking pictures. So, it's a little bit color coded, but whatever. Mostly in no particular order. So, first one is find your go to outdoor spots that are close to you. So I think this is actually really important um, for people who have a time crunch and who experience decision fatigue. If the possibilities are endless, then you may never get around to the photo shoot. So find some good spots outdoors near you, like really near you, within a block. I think it's ideal to find at least 5 spots where you could take pictures of a doll or two within a block of your home. For me, those places are mostly not in my yard because it's a newer home and we don't have mature trees in the yard and I don't water my grass, so it is rarely green. But in the spring and summer, I have a few bushes and some ornamental grass in the front of my house that'll work as nice natural backdrops. Um, we also have a small river birch in the backyard, so dolls can stand in front of that little junior tree, and that works. But most of my quick shots are taken at the entrance to our subdivision, so just very close to my house. Um, and that's because there are rocks that I can use year round, and there are flowers in the spring and summer, and there are evergreens, which I use all the time. So your go-to places might be different. Um, it might be nature and plants, but it also might be a fence or bricks or a walkway or barn or gravel. I don't know, but I strongly recommend finding a few places that you can access very easily. Next tip is portrait mode. Um, I I feel like a lot of less than ideal background stuff can just kind of blend away with portrait mode. And maybe that is the lazy way, but I am not a professional. So I appreciate how effective it is and the fact that it helps me avoid stress. So on your phone, it might be called something different, but for me, it just says portrait. And you can adjust how blurry you want things in the background to be. Um, so I play around with that. Sometimes less blur is more. Sometimes I want it completely blurred out. But if you go too crazy with it, it might make the edges of the actual subject in the foreground not look so great. So play around with that. And another one I would say that I follow pretty religiously, I mean, whenever I can, photograph in the shade if I'm outdoors. The harsh glares of like not best times of day can really create some ugly shadows under the eyes. Like the eyelashes can kind of cast shadows. And if I have a few reliably shady spots, then I don't have to worry about planning my photo shoots around the sun and rearrange my day to try to get that golden hour light. Yes, I sometimes manage to get it, but if the kiddo is occupied and I have the motivation for 5 minutes, I wanna duck out, do a photo shoot, and get back in, and I am able to do that most frequently by having some shady spots up my sleeve, so to speak. Number 4 is regarding lighting indoors. So many people will tell you, "Take all your pictures outdoors." It's just not always possible, friends. Sometimes mobility issues, or I can't leave the sleeping baby, or the weather sucks outside, or people aren't comfortable going outdoors with their dolls and taking pictures. For any number of reasons, outdoor pictures aren't always possible. You can still get kick-ass pictures, friends. Like, it's totally doable. I would say things to keep in mind are artificial light is not inherently evil. So, yes, you can open your window, and if that can let some natural light in, sometimes that looks really good. But don't let people scare you into thinking that you cannot get good pictures indoors. I will post pictures of a couple lights that I use um, for my channel and for doll photography. And I just find that it's helpful to find something I can move around and kind of lift up with one hand while snapping a picture with another, just so that I can play around with where I'm moving it and try to get as few harsh, ugly shadows as possible. And I don't strive for perfection. So maybe that should have been one of my tips. Don't strive for perfection. It'll drive you nuts in any aspect of your life. Have some ready-made backgrounds. That's my tip number 5, for indoor photography specifically. We bought a couple of pieces of the cheapest, thinnest wood you can get from Home Depot and had them cut it, and we bought contact paper, some solids, some patterns, and covered one side with one, another the flip side with another, and they all stack neatly. You can slip them behind the couch, between the couch and the wall, or, in a closet, wherever is convenient, and grab them out at a moment's notice. And it's just really nice to have a solid background or something cleaned. The rest of the house could be chaotic, and this thing will be able to be pulled out and create a nice clean slate for your pictures. Especially if I'm just trying to showcase maybe specifically an outfit, not really my creativity, but the outfit or the hairstyle that I did for a doll or the new pair of earrings that I made for her. So we use those boards. We also bought some like fake greenery that comes in squares, and we have like two squares kind of tied together with zip ties or something, and we can just throw those, like tack those onto the board, and so we still have our pop it out really easily, put it up kind of backdrop, but it has a little more texture. And you can see Rebecca is in front of this really pretty fabric that's also just draped over one of those boards. So everything goes out of sight, out of mind, but we can pull it out really quickly. So yeah, ready-made backdrops. Number 6, use a prop or two. They don't all have to be brand and they don't all have to be expensive, but adding some little prop of interest is really helpful. In this case, a bike. That's kind of a significant prop, by the way. I don't own that bike. Um, Somebody loaned it to me to take this picture. But in this next picture, that's Dollar Tree stuff. Some fake, Easter grass, a bucket, and, instead of an Easter basket, it's just a little metal pail and a foam sparkly egg that is doubling as a regular Easter egg. Or here, the one prop that's here, it's, 2 dolls and nature and a little tiny stuffed koala. That's not brand, which is we found it and thought it seemed to be the right size. All right. Next, I this is one of those things I felt like everybody knows this. I don't really need to say this, right? But a lot of people just use elastics, clear elastics to adhere things to their doll's hands and hadn't really heard of glue dots. So, here's a picture of what glue dots and mini glue dots look like. And they're not really reusable. like anything kind of sticky. But I use them quite frequently to hold things like, in this case, the doll's skirt is being held up because I couldn't, like, I kept trying to tuck it into her fingers and it would just fall back out and fall back out. And who needs that frustration? So I just grabbed a little glue dot, put it in there, took the picture, and took it back down. I haven't had any problem with fabrics sticking to the glue dot, like, in a problematic way, usually just long enough to hold a pose and then I could take it off. Paper, if it's very thin or very cheap paper, it could tear the paper when you try to remove the glue dot, so I would be mindful about that. But anything plastic is definitely safe. And here you can see, for example, a plastic candy cane for Christmas pictures. Or here, a plastic cassette tape. And I think that I just made sure that I was putting the glue dot on the plastic part and not on the sticker part of this cassette. Number 8 is a really common photography tip: change your angles. And not just from one photo shoot to the next, but during a photo shoot. You've already got the dolls set up, just try different angles. Like, you move around instead of constantly moving your dolls around. So here's one example. I got a little lower and I angled myself a little bit further around and obviously closer in, but I'm really focusing on the angle changes here. Or this one, all I did was move my body a little bit so that I would get a different angle. Here's a more extreme example, I guess, but it's the same photo shoot and the car was in the same place. All I did was change my angle, go from behind at an angle to overhead. Number 9 is related to the fact that they don't always want to look at the camera, and it's okay. Some of them have the bad eyes. They didn't pick it. They can't help it. Some of them, those Josefina molds, got wonky eyes, Jess molds with really wonky eyes. There's nothing they can do about it. I mean, you fix it, or it in actuality, or you work around it in photography. Those are your options. So you can lay them down like this. Like, Nora is just laying down on the grass. And I love this picture of her because I like the outfit. The grass is green. It's clearly not my grass. And yeah, she happens to have her eyes closed. Or back before Amara got her good eyes, before I fixed the problem in actuality, I worked around it in photography. So I never tried to get her staring straight on because the pictures were always horrible. Um, Blair has a little bit of a wonky eye. We've adjusted it some, but especially in these pictures, or in this era of her time with us, um, anything where we tried to get her to look straight on was troublesome. I've used sunglasses and sleep masks and all kinds of things to just not have to worry about the fact that some of our dolls don't want to look at the camera. Speaking of what their what their eyes are doing or what they've got on them, let's talk about glasses. I The glare can be frustrating for somebody like me who doesn't use Photoshop or Lightroom or anything, who uses their phone and maybe a couple filters on a fancy day, right? Most of my pictures, honestly, are hashtag no filters because I I don't put a lot of energy into um, editing them. So I go old school, and if they're glasses that we are going to photograph dolls wearing a lot, I pop the lenses out. Particularly, the ombre glasses are my favorite AG glasses ever. So I popped the lenses out of a pair of those. We have a couple pair of them. And then both mine and my wife's mini me dolls wear glasses permanently. So the lenses are popped out of those, so we never have to worry about the glare. Just reduces my frustration. I'm not saying do that with all of your glasses, but just saying it's something to consider if it makes sense for you. Next, number 11 is mix up the groupings. My default is to take pictures of dolls by themselves because when I travel, it's usually only with one doll. It's easier for me to schlep one doll outdoors to take some pictures. If I'm doing pictures for videos, they're often showcasing an outfit that I've kind of created, or it might be to um, show off, like I said earlier, a hairstyle or a piece of jewelry that I've made or something like that. So I end up doing a lot of just one doll, one subject in the photo. But things can get a little boring and stale if you only do that. So I am intentional about trying to mix it up and make sure that I get some pairs and some clusters and some different kind of groupings just to keep things interesting. Number 12, where in the frame does the doll go? You've probably heard of the rule of thirds and of imagining that there is a grid, like a 3 by 3 grid laying like overlay. I think cameras even have settings where you can have that shown just to help with your composition. I'm going to be honest, I don't fully understand this because whether your doll is in the upper third or the like all three of the left third of your picture or the bottom 2 thirds, on the right-hand side, I don't really think that this makes your picture any more or less successful. For me, the rule of those thirds is more about being mindful to mix it up, just like the groupings. There's nothing inherently better about photographing one subject or four. Just I personally enjoy looking at my pictures more when there's a mix of those. And I personally enjoy looking through my pictures when they're not all dead center or they're not all slid all the way over to the left. So in this picture, Rory and I think that's Maddie are on, I would say, the left 2 thirds of the picture. Here, Covey and this horse are dead center, middle third. And then on the right-hand side, we have Blair, far right, so the right third. I like them all. All of these pictures are lovely and they bring good memories, and I had fun taking them. So it's really just about mixing it up for me. If anybody else wants to chime in the comments about the rule of thirds meaning more to them and why, feel free to expand. Next one, just keep it in mind if you are getting inspiration from people's photos, especially from other doll photographers, make sure that you understand the line between inspiration and forgery. Different people draw that line in different places. Some people aren't reasonable and think that if you've ever, if they photograph something pink and you ever photograph something pink, then you were clearly stealing from them. That's not a reasonable thing. But if you know that you are like, I love that photo shoot, I want to duplicate it, you could give credit at the very least, and you should give credit at the very least. I don't run into this much for myself personally, mainly because I save people's photos all the time, like, "Oh, I would love to do something like that," and then I just don't get around to going back and looking at those saved photos. Or I do, and I go, "Oh, that looks like more work than I wanna do." But, I do remember this, that Kimberly Hauk had posted this picture in a Facebook group, and then I saw her daughter post it on Cammie's Dolls for Days on Instagram, and I really loved how Addie looked in this, and I was like, "I also have this boy." So here was my it was inspired by photo, and theirs was obviously infinitely more interesting. I didn't take my dolls outside, and I could have. Um, I mainly just wanted to show her like, "Hey, I did my doll's hair like yours based on that photo." And also since I had the same boy doll, I put them together and kind of gave her a '70s vibe. Nod to you and gave credit, right? So, yeah, let's just be respectful. If it is clearly if I were trying to recreate that exact scene, then I probably would have reached out and said, "Are you cool with this?" I don't know, just because people can be funny about that. Personally, if you ever happen to be inspired by any photo I do, a shout out is appropriate. You don't need to ask my permission. Next one. Number 14 is give your doll a once over, and I would like bold and italicize this one. It really sucks to go get everything ready and get lighting and find the time and, maybe your props together and finally get the doll to be able to stand and do the right pose. And you take like 30 pictures or maybe even more. And then you pack everything up and you get back, you sit down on your couch and you're scrolling through everything. And you realize in all of these, or in the best ones, there's a hair right in front of this doll's face, or the necklace clasp had slid down and is visible in every single picture, or the body tag is sticking out in all of the pictures, or you can see the neck string, or whatever the thing is, right? So just spend 30 seconds before you really start taking your pictures, giving your dolls a head to toe once over, checking for any little thing that you think might annoy you. So here's an example of where I didn't follow my own advice, or I just didn't catch it, right? Cute. I love this I was so focused on lighting and trying to work with all these weird, shadows, and I wanted to take a picture from the outside of this, so it was, like, looking through the window, and it was more focused on composition and whatnot, that I didn't even pay attention to this hair right in the middle of her eyeball. I don't mind all the rest of the flyaways, that's just life, right? Like, curly hair, anybody's hair, we get flyaways, but the one right across her eye, that's so annoying. I'm surprised I even have this picture. I must not have noticed it initially. Or this, I remember this photo shoot. My wife was like really excited about creating this outfit. Specifically, she had Covey in mind. I supplied the earrings and the headband, and she put together all the rest. And we went out to one of our go-to outdoor spots and took a crap ton of pictures. And then she realized, dun dun dun, that the purse had been bunching up the skirt, and I think it had bunched it up in one other spot, and she was like, "Oh, it's like that in every single picture," and for her, it kind of ruined it. I still think the pictures look lovely, but I understand that that's one of those things, like, if it matters to you, it matters. It's not my place to judge, and once you see it, it's hard for you to unsee, so the lesson is really just give them a once over. It'll only take you 30 extra seconds. Here's another one. Oh, look, Kanani and Alexis, they're both wearing blue and white stripes. One of my favorite nautical looks for the American Girl dolls. And they look like sisters. And who cares? Because there are hairs all over Kanani's face. So I think I did catch this and I was able to move it out and get some pictures that didn't look like this. But yeah, if all of them had been like this, I would have been very frustrated. Number 15, take pictures of the details. Whether that is, took a picture of them standing in front of the flower and then you get a close up of the flower, or you're doing a scene and 3 or 4 of the dolls are all hanging out together at a slumber party. Take a close up of the cassette tapes or their snacks or their stuffed animal. Or if they're all having dinner, then take a close up of the meal, of the dishes in the sink, those kinds of things. Um, Here are some examples. Have Quinn serving a drink and then a close up of the drinks. Or my Nikki prototype. This was something I did after they had leaked pictures, but before the dolls were actually released. Um, and then a close up of her feet on the skateboard. Or these I really liked. Kanani and Nanea were out in my driveway a couple years ago playing in the snow, and I got a couple pictures of snowflakes where if you zoom in, you can really see the detail and before the snowflakes melted. So yeah, if you can get some little details in there, I think that's really nice. Number 16, this is kind of obvious, but I'll say it. Don't shoot all your pictures vertically or portrait mode, or don't shoot all of them horizontally, landscape mode. Mix it up. That can be helpful because certain social media like one layout more than the other. Also, personally, I just like having a mix of them. I find it more interesting. If I ever wanted to do a little photo book, I would be glad that I had a mix of options to choose from. Number 17, let them lean on you or let them lean on a wall. Support the dolls somehow. Let me give you an example to make more sense. Instead of getting frustrated that Nikki couldn't stand and do some kind of complicated yoga picture pose so that I could get this shot, I just held one of her legs up off the camera because I wanted it to look like she had walked over and was feasting her eyes on the loot here after they went trick or treating. And I really like this picture. I know that my hand is over there on the side, like, holding her leg and taking the picture with the other hand, but I don't think that anybody else would, like, know that or really, more importantly, care. It's a good picture. No, Tenny cannot hold this pose on her own. She's leaned slightly back, so she's resting against the wall, and I love this picture. And if all she needs is a little support so that I can get the shot, fine by me. Here, I'm most definitely holding her leg up off screen. And this one's a little bit more obvious, but I didn't want to invest the time of like, let me go get fishing line and try to wrap it around her leg. And then what do I suspend it to? And then do I have to take that off afterwards? And like, do I have to learn Photoshop just to eliminate this fishing line? No. I'm just going to hold it up off screen. She did so many photos or so many poses in this particular photo shoot. This was just one of many poses. Not stressing about it. Number 18 is a little bit more of a technical term, but you've seen it and it'll make sense when I show you examples. It's where just based on the way that you compose the shot, you can make somebody look really large in comparison to things that they're actually not bigger than, or really small in comparison to things that they're actually not smaller than. Um, for example, when people, are traveling and they're holding up the Leaning Tower of Pisa, that's forced perspective. Or they're squishing a building between their fingers, that's forced perspective. All right, so here's an example. Danny was in our local library, and I knew that if I put her next to the books, she would look ridiculous because books should not be as tall as her, right? So I propped her up on a stack probably of books or like a stool or something, and I set her up, and then I came several shelves away and took this picture. So the books that are in the foreground look ginormous because they're in the foreground, but the overall effect is Danny looks pretty proportionate here. Here's another one. We took a series of pictures at the YMCA, like soccer fields near my house, and the goal posts or the goal nets in the background are far enough away that they don't look huge compared to her. They are. She would look ridiculous if I took her right next to one. But because of the distance there, it works. And then here's another one where forced perspective is at play. My daughter's Lindsay doll was dressed as Ruth Bader Ginsburg, and I wanted to take a picture of her in front of a courthouse. This is in my town, so probably a 7-minute drive. I'm a big fan of knowing and learning what places make good photo opportunities around my town. So I took her here. I got some pictures of her like all the way up on the courtroom or the courthouse steps, but the steps are like the height of her waist. So it's very evident that the scale is way off. But this, because of forced perspective, I think works. Like you could easily have a person standing in front of a building, and since you can't really gauge the distance and you don't know if that courthouse is on a hill or up a bunch of steps, she does not seem tiny. Like this works. Yeah. I don't have more examples or too many more examples of this because it's not something that I'm like super strong at yet, but I'm working on it. It requires a little more forethought and planning than sometimes I put into it. So that's why it's not my strong suit yet. Number 19 is change your focus. And this is pretty obvious, right? But it's really easy to do. So this is the same shot basically. And on one of them, I tapped on her face on my phone, and it made the focus go on that. And then on the one on the right, I tapped on the book, and it made the focus on the book and blurred everything else. So to me, both of these are fine. It's really about what story are you trying to tell. The one on the left to me says Danny was lost in a book. And the one on the right is more about what book is Danny lost in now. Here's another example. Earlier this year, I took a few dolls out and got a bunch of skiing shots, and I was trying to make it look like they were taking a selfie. And I've seen people pull that off. I felt like I was a little bit on the struggle bus, but I did a picture where you can see Bree and Lilibet very clearly, and their camera is blurry, and then where their camera is in focus, and they are the ones that are blurry. And I will say, I also did a picture where all of it was clear and in focus, and that one I liked least because I felt like it was the least interesting. So, yeah, this is another one that I don't have tons of examples of, but I am trying to be mindful to play around with. Just you already have them set up. Just try all three. I tap on their faces, I take the shot. I tap on the camera, I take the shot. Turn off my camera, turn it on again so it focuses on everything or whatever you need to do to make sure that it focuses on everything, point it away somewhere else and then back to them and take the shot. It's going to only take a couple extra seconds, but it gives you more options to choose from, and you might find that you like one more than another. Okay, so next we're going to look at some pictures, and I have the list of all the tips that I gave on the left. The picture will be on the right. You can pause it, look at the picture, look at the list, pick out which ones you think I incorporated, and obviously you can't incorporate them all because you can't have, like, take pictures in the shade outdoors and use good artificial lighting indoors for the same picture. But which ones were at play, and maybe are there any that I overlooked? And then I will be quiet, you can pause, and then when it continues playing, I will give my rendition for, like, maybe, like, the first 3 photos, and then you can figure it out on your own from there. So here's the first one. Go ahead and pause it if you need to. All right, here's what I noticed. I used portrait mode. I put some asterisk by photograph in the shade. I couldn't photograph in the shade for this particular shot. We were out in a field and the full sun was hitting every single spot in the field. There was not a shady spot. And if I took pictures of her face, her lashes and the sun, it was just creating really harsh shadows on her eyes and it didn't look good. And so rather than stress about it, I changed angles and I got behind her. And I love this. And they're not always looking at the camera. Well, in this case, it was really about the sun. So that's why. Where in the frame does the doll go? I put her on the right third, and I think it made this more interesting. I think that portrait mode protected people's privacy because I don't know all these people and they can't consent to being in there, but it also really made the focus on her. And also forced perspective because I got so close to her face, like, well, the back of her head. I think the scale works a little better. She doesn't look like a tiny doll surrounded by a bunch of giant people. She looks like somebody, honestly, if you couldn't see that shoulder joint, she looks like somebody who's just attending the festival. I would say what I didn't do well was give her a once over because she's got all these crazy hairs at the top. Um, and really I was trying to give her a once over, but I was taking so many pictures and her flower crown would fall off. If I had it to do over, I would have smoothed down her hair, but it's fine. I still really like this picture. All right, let's do, another one together, maybe 2 more together, and then I'll let you finish up on your own. Here we go. Pause, check over the list, make your own mental list of what I incorporated and what I didn't. And here's my list. There weren't so many things at play. I used portrait mode mainly because I couldn't do forced perspective with the giant squares on the floor and the baseboard, so to speak, being so tall relative to them. I couldn't really trick the eye into thinking this was, like, scaled to them. But I at least wanted to blur some of these, like, full size mannequins that would make it even more, like, kind of painfully obvious. Um, Use a prop or 2. Sure did that. I didn't put it on there, but I also used the glue dots because I'm pretty sure that Quinn on the left is holding that Sephora bag with a glue dot. Um, except for the American Girl bag and the Sephora bag, I made all the rest of them. So, yeah, definitely used some props. Mixed up the groupings because my default is single doll, and here we have a pair. You can't tell, but I also should give myself credit for take pictures from different angles because I did a lot of pictures in this photo shoot, and this was just one of many angles. And then this one, it's going to be kind of obvious, but go ahead and pause, focusing on the picture on the right. All right. And this one, indoor lighting, I could not do anything about. I was traveling, I was out of state. I did not bring an external light source that I could just carry around with me. The vacation was the point. The doll photography was bonus. So her eyes look a little like black beads, and the shadows are kind of not favorable, but whatever. I like the picture. I'm glad I took it. Use a prop or 2. She's got her suitcase. I think it's much more entertaining because of that. It tells a story. Otherwise, this wouldn't be as clear what's going on. Give my doll a once over. I sure did. She doesn't have any crazy hairs right in the middle of her face. No weird tags sticking out. Everything is as I wanted it to be. Forced perspective as much as I could. I mean, look at the opposite extreme on that left-hand picture, and that's why I put that picture there. Like, this is what it looks like when there's no forced perspective in play at all. The doll looks tiny relative to all the human-sized things around her. On the right, I think that is less so. So part of that is getting down on her level, part of that is picking what the background is. Just play around with that kind of thing. And then for the rest of these, you can pause as you want. You could even go back and pause and go through the video and look at the other pictures and see, like, maybe I was pointing out one aspect, but now that you have the list, you could kind of go through a checklist and see how many of them were at play or which ones were lacking. And then when you're done, please comment below if anything in this list is helpful, if there's anything that you plan on trying. If you are into doll photography and you have some additional tips that you want to share, I would say, because my target audience for this one is people who don't want to be stressed out, they don't want to buy new programs or fancy new camera or dedicate hours and hours and hours to it. They just want to have fun and maybe improve the quality of the pictures they're taking. Right. So if you have tips that are kind of for that audience, feel free to share them below. If you've got some specific challenges to doll photography, that I haven't helped with these tips, feel free to share those challenges in the comments. I'll see what I can do, and I'm sure plenty of other people reading the comments might be willing to jump in and help. When you do get to the end of this video, I'll have a playlist up on the left and a video selected just for you by the YouTube algorithm on the right. You are welcome to binge watch to your heart's content. And also know that if you are a regular on my channel, you already know this, but if you are new, know that I post regularly. So I will have another new video up for you before you know it. Take care. Go grab a camera, take some pictures of your dolls. Bye.